You wake before sunrise. The air is already warm, heavy with the scent of wet reeds and smoke from last night's cooking fire. Somewhere nearby, a rooster mistakes the first hint of light for full day and begins yelling about it. You roll over on your mat, woven papyrus, itchy in all the wrong ways, and realize you're not dreaming. You actually live in ancient Egypt now. Congratulations. Or condolences. Your hut's walls glow faintly gold as the first light of Ra slides over the horizon. The roof creaks as it settles from the cool night into the heat of morning. Dust motes float lazily in the air, like tiny golden gods deciding whether to bless your day or ruin it. The Nile murmurs in the distance, that endless heartbeat of Egypt, flowing as it has for thousands of years. You hear the low call of an ibis, a good omen, perhaps, unless it's the one that always steals from your drying fish rack. You sit up. Your back protests. You'd think sleeping on woven reeds would build character, but mostly it just builds splinters. Outside, a neighbor's child is already shouting, "The water's low today," which, in Egypt, is both a casual comment and a subtle warning. The Nile's moods decide everyone's fate here. A generous flood means full bellies, a weak one means famine. Historians still debate whether the priests truly predicted the river's rise, or just got very good at pretending afterward. You slip on a linen tunic, thin enough to let the air through, but thick enough to protect your modesty, or what passes for modesty in a place where people routinely shave their entire bodies for purity. The fabric smells faintly of sweat and Nile water. You knot it at the waist with practiced hands. Outside, the light blooms honey gold on mud brick, pink over palms, silver on the river. It's beautiful in a way that feels eternal. Your stomach growls. Breakfast, then. You step outside and are immediately hit with the smell of baking barley. Bread flat, coarse, and slightly smoky, like someone toasted sand into it. A woman down the lane waves a paddle to keep flies away. Her cat lounges beside the oven, looking smug and holy, as cats do. In Egypt, that smugness is justified. Cats are practically divine. You, however, are still waiting for anyone to notice your own divinity. You trade a few kind words and a bit of gossip, how the scribe's son got caught sneaking figs, how the overseer's sandals broke again, how a crocodile was spotted upriver last night. Everyone's pretending to be calm about that last one, but you can feel the edge in their voices. The Nile gives life, but it also gives teeth. Breakfast is simple. Bread dipped in beer. Yes, beer. It's safer than water and thicker than you expect, halfway between oatmeal and optimism. It smells faintly sweet, like overripe fruit and clay jars. You drink slowly, listening to the soft hum of life waking around you. Hooves, voices, tools, the sigh of the river. Someone nearby hums a hymn to Ra. You feel the world growing brighter by the moment. The sun climbs higher, scattering the early haze. It's not hot yet, but it will be soon. You'll spend most of the day outside working, walking, sweating, pretending not to notice how badly you need shade. You remember hearing someone say, "You probably won't make it through this day." You chuckle now, thinking they were joking. As you step toward the riverbank, you pass a small shrine. Offerings of bread and flowers sit before a carved statue of Hathor, goddess of joy and love, and, oddly enough, music. You pause, press your palm to the cool stone, and whisper a quick prayer that your day be kind. Whether it's heard or not, well, historians still argue about how much the gods cared versus how much people just needed to believe they did. Somewhere behind you, a farmer curses at his donkey. A breeze lifts from the river, carrying the scent of water and silt and life itself. You squint against the growing brightness, shading your eyes. The day has begun. If you're new here, take a moment, yes, even now, to like and subscribe to this little journey through time. It helps more than you think. And as you listen, maybe drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always evening somewhere, and history sounds softer in the dark. Now, take a deep breath. The sun is climbing, the fields are calling, and there's a full day of ancient Egypt waiting for you. Let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk toward the Nile, your bare feet sinking into the cool mud where the morning dew still clings. The air hums softly with insects and distant voices. A pair of ibises flap overhead, their wings white against the brightening sky. Around you, The world is waking a symphony of splashes, creaks, and human grumbles. The river dominates everything here. It's not just water, it's the spine of civilization, the quiet god that feeds every crop, bathes every skin, and occasionally swallows the careless. You kneel by its edge, feeling the chill of the current slide over your hands. It's brown and slow-moving, thick with silt from lands you'll never see. You scoop some up and watch it swirl between your fingers. Mud, yes, but also life. Without it, Egypt would be nothing but dust. Fishermen nearby haul in woven nets, glistening with tilapia and catfish. They chatter about the weather in tones both reverent and resigned, because weather here mostly means how generous will Ra be today. One of them grins, a missing tooth glinting like a lunar eclipse, and offers you a small fish as thanks for helping untangle his line. You accept it, of course. In a place where everything depends on the Nile, generosity is a kind of currency. The fields beyond are alive, with motion, men and women bending over rows of barley and emmer wheat, their bodies moving like reeds in rhythm with the water. Children run, with clay pots, filling them for drinking and carrying them home with exaggerated pride. Every few steps, you see an offering jar nestled in the reeds. Milk, flowers, or a scrap of bread left for Hapi, the god of the flood. Some jars are cracked and half buried in silt, relics of prayers that may or may not have been answered. Historians still debate whether those small offerings were more religious or more practical insurance, perhaps for a river that occasionally forgot to visit on schedule. Either way, it's endearing to think. Even 4,000 years ago, humans were still trying to bribe nature into behaving. The sun climbs higher, and with it, the heat. You wrap a linen cloth around your head, but sweat still trickles down your neck. The Nile's surface shimmers like molten bronze now, and somewhere downstream, a crocodile slides silently from a sandbank into the water. You try not to think about that. You succeed for about 4 seconds. You pass a group of workers loading papyrus onto a small wooden boat. The smell of the reeds, sharp, sweet, and slightly moldy, mixes with the aroma of fish drying in baskets. They nod in greeting, too busy to talk. Someone mutters that the scribe overseeing them has the personality of a particularly grumpy hippo. You smile politely. In Egypt, humor is subtle but constant, a quiet rebellion against the weight of the sun. As the hours stretch, the rhythm of the day settles into you. The sound of poles pushing boats, the splash of nets, the creak of oars, all of it merges into one endless hum. It's almost hypnotic. You imagine the same sounds drifting through this same air 3,000 years ago, and you realize, in some ways, nothing has changed. Then you spot something curious, a narrow island in the middle of the river, crowned with date palms and the remnants of what looks like a shrine. A few men are ferrying offerings there, jars of oil, bread loaves, and oddly, a small wooden cat figurine. You ask who. It's for... One man shrugs. Old gods, new gods, who can keep track? You laugh softly, thinking how true that feels even now. Humans never quite stop revising their theology. By midday, the heat is thick enough to chew. You wade waist-deep into the water to cool off, careful to stay close to the shore. The current tugs gently at your clothes, and for a moment, you forget time altogether. You close your eyes, listening to the water rush past, and the chatter fade into distance. When you open them again, a small boy is watching you from the bank. He's holding a clay pot and frowning with the seriousness only children can manage. "Don't go too deep," he says. "The spirits live out there." His tone suggests he's not entirely joking. You nod solemnly, thanking him for the warning. He runs off, and you stand there a while longer, feeling the slow pulse of the river against your legs. You can almost sense the weight of centuries beneath the surface. The farmers, the fishermen, the priests, the endless lives built on this same mud. The Nile doesn't remember names, but it remembers everything else. You step back onto the bank, dripping, and squint toward the far fields shimmering under the noon sun. The day's real work is about to begin. Somewhere beyond those palms, the overseer's voice will soon call out, and you'll have to answer. But for now, you take a deep breath and watch the river glisten. It's peaceful, too peaceful, almost suspiciously peaceful. You can't help but smile. Ancient Egypt might be beautiful, But as you're quickly learning, beautiful things often expect a lot of work in return. The river laps once more at your feet, like it's agreeing with you. And then, from far off, the temple bells begin to ring. The bells echo across the fields, hollow bronze notes that shimmer in the heat like ghosts of sound. You know what they mean. Work begins, not the delicate, air-conditioned kind you might be used to. This is the sun in your teeth, sweat on your eyelids kind. The kind where your muscles learn ancient languages of complaint. You trudge through the dust toward the worksite, squinting at the glimmer of white linen tunics in the distance. The overseer's platform rises above the barley fields like a throne for a man who believes shouting is a divine calling. He's already there, arms folded, chewing on a reed, his shadow long and sharp. Beside him stands a scribe with an ink palette balanced on his knee, one of those men whose job is to immortalize exactly how many baskets of grain you move today. In a world without spreadsheets, this is the closest thing to eternal accountability. The work rhythm is older than memory. The irrigation ditches need clearing. The water must flow evenly through the channels so the barley won't drown in one patch and shrivel in another. You wade into the damp earth with a dozen others, each of you swinging short hoes made from acacia wood and bronze. The air smells of mud, sweat, and faintly of onions, the ancient Egyptian perfume of productivity. Someone jokes that the last person who skipped a day was invited to count stones at a construction site near Memphis. Everyone laughs, but it's the kind of laughter that means let's not test that rumor. You work in rhythm, chop, lift, toss, step. It's hypnotic, almost musical. One man hums a harvest song, low and steady. Another joins in with a makeshift harmony. The sound mingles with the creak of wooden tools and the occasional slap of water. Historians still debate whether these communal songs were work chants or covert protests, melodies that mocked the overseers while pretending to honor the gods. You can't say for sure, but some of the lyrics do sound suspiciously like complaints disguised as devotion. By late morning, the sun is merciless. It presses on your skull like a physical weight. You pause to wipe your forehead, using your tunic's hem, which by now smells like both effort and regret. The scribe looks up from his papyrus, frowning at your pause, and makes a quick mark. You're fairly certain it means lazy. The overseer strolls past, sandals sinking slightly in the mud. Faster, he says in a voice that suggests slowness is a moral failing. He stops to adjust the lash tied at his belt, not to use it, just to remind everyone it exists. You force a smile and swing harder. You tell yourself it's good exercise, that maybe future historians will appreciate your contribution to human endurance. They won't, but it's a nice thought. A sudden gust of wind rolls across the field, lifting the smell of the river. You glance up to see clouds forming in thin streaks, rare this time of year. For a moment, the heat eases. The workers sigh collectively, a small symphony of relief. Even the overseer pauses to squint at the sky, as if considering whether he should yell at the weather. A young boy brings around jugs of beer for everyone, thick, warm, slightly sour, but the closest thing to heaven you'll taste today. You take a gulp, wipe your mouth, and feel a brief, sleepy euphoria. Ancient Egyptian beer isn't elegant, but it gets the job done. Someone jokes that it's the breakfast of the blessed dead. You laugh through your exhaustion. As noon approaches, you notice something odd. A small shrine set up under a palm tree, just off the field. Offerings of onions, a clay amulet, and strangely, a folded scrap of linen with writing on it. You can't resist peeking. It's a prayer scrawled in quick ink. May tomorrow come gently. It's simple, humble, and somehow perfect. You leave it untouched, feeling the faintest chill run through you. Later, as the work slows, you hear whispers among the men. They talk about a rumor that a noble's grain barge capsized upriver, and the local priests are arguing whether it's a bad omen or simply bad rope. Either way, the Nile's mood seems to decide everyone's. By the time the overseer finally signals for a break, the sky is a pale, shivering blue. You drop your hoe, stretch your aching arms, and collapse beneath the nearest shade. The sound of cicadas swells. The earth is hot beneath you, the air thick with dust and life. You lie there, half dreaming, half listening to the chatter around you. Someone tells a story about a farmer who tried to cheat the flood by digging a secret canal and ended up flooding his own home. Someone else swears they saw the moon reflected in the Nile at midday, a sure sign of divine mischief. You close your eyes, smiling faintly. Egypt may be ruled by gods and kings, but it's the people, the workers, the gossips, the dreamers who give it its rhythm. You realize, not without irony, that history always remembers the pharaohs but never the hands that shaped their kingdoms. The overseer's voice cuts through your thoughts again. Back to work, he bellows. You groan, roll over, and rise. Slowly. The sun has shifted. The Nile gleams in the distance, patient and eternal, pretending not to notice your suffering. As you lift your hoe once more, you can't help but mutter under your breath, "Maybe next time, I'll pick a cooler century." The man beside you laughs. "Next time?" he says. "No one escapes Egypt." You grin, half believing him, and return to the rhythm chop, lift, toss, step, the heartbeat of survival, echoing across 4,000 years. By the time the sun hits its highest point, everything around you glows with that impossible, blinding white heat, the kind that makes the air shimmer like glass. The overseer finally calls for the midday rest, and the workers scatter gratefully toward the shade of date palms, carrying baskets, clay jugs, and the kind of exhaustion that could be worshipped as a minor deity. You join them under a drooping palm, your tunic sticking to your back. Someone has already started a small cooking fire, its smoke curls lazily into the glaring sky. The meal is simple: barley bread, dried fish, maybe some onions if fortune smiles on you. And yes, more beer. Warm, earthy, slightly sour beer, the great equalizer of Egyptian society. You take a sip, grimace, and take another anyway. A woman nearby hands out dates from a woven basket. She wears a necklace of faience beads, the blue-green color so vivid it almost looks alive. "Don't eat too many," she warns softly. "They'll make you dream too hard." You laugh, but there's a flicker of seriousness in her eyes. You've learned that here. Almost every superstition hides some small truth. As you eat, you listen to the hum of conversation around you. It's a chorus of ordinary life. Someone complains about the tax collectors. Another boasts about his cousin's new goat. Someone else insists that the priest at the temple of Sobek has a secret pet crocodile. He feeds leftover bread. Historians still debate whether temple animals were truly divine, or simply very well-fed mascots. Either way, you'd rather not test it. One of the older workers begins to tell a story. His voice is rough but steady. He speaks of the pharaoh, the living god, son of Ra, embodiment of order itself. The way he says it, you can hear awe and fatigue tangled together, as if admiration and obligation have become one. When the king sneezes, he says, priests record it as an omen. You almost snort your beer through your nose. "So what happens if he trips?" you ask. "Then," he says gravely, "we say the earth itself stumbled." You laugh, but the others nod solemnly. There's no irony here. To live in Egypt is to exist within a great cosmic story where every cough, every flood, every cracked wall has meaning. It's comforting. In a way, life becomes a pattern, not chaos. You imagine a world where everything that happens to you is divine choreography. Maybe even your bad hair days. Still, the talk turns quieter when someone mentions the royal tax grain quotas. You can feel the weight in the air, the subtle fear of falling short, of being noticed by the wrong official. No one complains too loudly. Egypt's bureaucracy is older than most gods, and nearly as unforgiving. To break the tension, a young man plucks a small reed flute and begins to play. The sound is thin, wavering, but it floats above the heat like something fragile and sacred. A few others join in, clapping softly in time. The rhythm is slow, hypnotic. You close your eyes and drift for a moment. You dream or half-dream of temples gleaming white, of long corridors painted with stars, of priests in linen whispering names older than the sun. You see yourself walking among them. Unnoticed but not unwelcome. You feel small but not insignificant. Like a grain of sand in an endless desert, tiny, yes, but necessary for the shape of the whole. When you open your eyes again, the fire has gone low and the shadows have shortened. A warm breeze ripples through the palms. Someone nearby murmurs a prayer to Hathor for shade, another to Thoth for wisdom. another to Bez for good dreams. The Egyptians do not play favorites with their gods. Theirs is a system of divine multitasking. You pick at what's left of your bread. The crust is blackened, but the center soft. It tastes like effort, like hours in the sun, like something earned. Across the field, you can see the distant glimmer of a temple dome. The overseer's hut stands near it, guarded by a pair of lazy dogs who look too enlightened to care about guarding anything. You stretch your legs, feeling the ache of honest labor sink into your bones. It's not comfortable, but it's real. There's something deeply grounding about that, the way life here feels both fragile and eternal, ordinary and holy at the same time. You take another sip of beer and watch the dragonflies skim the water's edge. A friend leans over and nudges you. "You've survived half the day," he says, with mock ceremony. "You might make it to sunset." You smile. "Might." The overseer claps his hands from a distance. Break time's over. The flute falls silent, the laughter fades, and everyone begins to rise. You stand too, brushing dust from your knees, and glance once more toward the glinting water. The Nile waits patiently, as if amused by your small ambitions. It has seen 1,000 noons like this one, 1,000 people who thought their labor mattered most, and yet it feels good to be part of its story, however small. You sling your tool over your shoulder and head back into the glare, already feeling the dry heat bite at your skin. "Back to the living gods," someone mutters. "Or back to their accountants," another replies. You grin. Somewhere in between, you suspect, lies the truth. By now, the sun is merciless Ra in full blaze, ruling over the world with the subtlety of a furnace. The earth trembles slightly in the heat, the air shimmering as if the gods themselves were stirring the horizon. You trudge back toward the fields, your shadow shrinking under you, the smell of baked mud rising from the ground. The work begins again. Every movement feels heavier now, slower. The rhythm that once felt musical in the morning now feels like survival. You and the others dig, lift, level, smooth. The ditches gleam under the sunlight like bronze snakes, winding between plots of wheat and flax. The mud pulls at your ankles, and every so often you pause to brush a beetle from your leg. Small creatures with eternal confidence, strolling across your labor like royalty. You catch sight of the overseer standing in the shade of a palm, fanning himself with a reed mat. Naturally, his assistant scribbles marks on a papyrus scroll with the bored precision of someone whose decided eternity might just be an endless spreadsheet. You sigh, then laugh to yourself. Some hierarchies, it seems, are timeless. Still, there's a strange calm to this suffering. The work hums with quiet cooperation. You know the man beside you will share his water, and you'll share yours. You know that no matter how hot, the day will end. You can almost feel that invisible agreement binding everyone here, the unspoken pact between humans and hardship. The hours blur together, the horizon dances. Once in a while, someone hums an old hymn to Ra, half prayer, half protest. The words are simple: give us light, not fire. It's not clear the god is listening. To distract yourself, you look up toward the line of palms bordering the fields. Beyond them, the pale shapes of temples shimmer in the heat. One, you're told, belongs to Khnum, the ram-headed god who fashioned humanity from clay on his potter's wheel. You imagine him now, sculpting figures like you from Nile, mud, careful, patient, perhaps laughing to himself when you forget to drink enough water. Historians still debate whether Khnum was worshipped primarily as a creator or as a water deity. You suspect he didn't mind the ambiguity. Gods, after all, thrive on multiple job descriptions. Someone nearby lets out a curse, soft but heartfelt. A wheel from the irrigation shaduf has jammed, wooden spokes cracked from the heat. You join the small group gathering to fix it. The wooden pole creaks as it's lifted, water dripping from its clay bucket. Together you push, twist, tie, and hope the ancient engineering spirit of Egypt approves. It's messy, but functional, just like most things here. A boy runs past, carrying a clay jug. He slips, laughs, spills half of it, and keeps going. The adults shout, half annoyed, half amused. You can't help smiling. Even here, under the punishing sky, life insists on its tiny moments of comedy. The wind shifts. For a moment, A faint breeze ripples through the palms, bringing the scent of lotus blossoms from the river. You look up tiny white flowers floating downstream, their petals glowing like pieces of moonlight. They drift lazily toward the irrigation channels, carried by the current. You stop working to watch one pass between your feet, the fragile perfection of it completely out of place among the mud and sweat. Someone catches you staring. "A lotus?" he says. "That's a blessing." "From which god?" you ask. He shrugs. "Whichever one's awake." You both laugh quietly. Time stretches, the light changing from white to honey. The shadows grow longer, though the heat refuses to fade. You feel dizzy for a moment, and one of the older workers notices. He hands you a damp cloth soaked in Nile water. "Put it on your head," he says. Ra takes the strong first. You thank him. The coolness shocks your skin, a fleeting relief. You wonder how anyone survives this day after day, decade after decade. But then, you realize they don't just survive it, they become it. The rhythm of Egypt isn't endurance by force, it's endurance by acceptance. The overseer finally calls out that work is ending soon. His voice sounds softer now, maybe from the heat, maybe from pity. You stand straighter, wiping sweat from your arms. The last tasks, tidying the tools, stacking the baskets, covering the irrigation channels with woven mats to slow evaporation. You catch the faint cry of herons gliding low over the river. The sound echoes across the fields like a sigh. When at last the order comes to stop, you sink down in the mud and laugh under your breath. The laughter surprises you, it feels earned, like a secret shared with the sun itself. You're filthy, sore, and slightly delirious, but you're also alive. The man beside you grins, not bad for someone who wasn't supposed to last a day. You smirk back. Day's not over. He gestures toward the horizon, where the light is beginning to mellow into gold. "No," he says, "but the gods are clocking out soon." You watch the sun lowering over the fields, the Nile catching its reflection in broken ribbons of light. The sky turns from white to amber, the air thick with the promise of rest. The worst is behind you for now. Somewhere beyond the palms, a priest's conch horn sounds in the distance, signaling the evening offerings. You can almost smell the incense already, resin and myrrh and smoke winding up to the heavens. You stand, stretching your back, and take one last look at the glimmering water. Tomorrow will come, and it will look exactly like today. But right now, you're content to just exist, sweaty, sore, and somehow sacred in the dust of this eternal land. You whisper a quiet thought, unsure if it's prayer or gratitude. The river answers with a ripple. And as you turn toward home, the day exhales with you slow, tired, but full of life. The sun softens to a molten orange as you trudge back from the fields, each step leaving a shallow print in the dust. The air smells of baked clay, Nile reeds, and faint smoke, the perfume of a day dying slowly. Shadows stretch long and thin, crawling up the mud brick walls of the village like tired travelers looking for rest. Your feet ache, your arms ache, even your shadow looks exhausted. But something about this hour, the in-between moment when Ra drifts toward the horizon, makes everything gentler. The light turns gold on the river's surface, rippling like liquid metal. A few herons cross overhead in perfect silence, long legs trailing like ink lines across the sky. Children run past you, barefoot and loud, their laughter breaking the still air. They chase each other with sticks, pretending to be soldiers of the Pharaoh's army, shouting grand speeches about defending Egypt from those dreadful Nubians, though it's clear none of them could find Nubia on a map if their life depended on it. You smile. Every empire begins with children pretending to be invincible. You pass a potter at his wheel, hands slick with clay. He hums a slow tune, shaping a vessel that could outlive you by millennia. "The Nile's gift," he says quietly without looking up. You nod. His work feels like worship, a daily resurrection of mud into beauty. Historians still debate whether Egyptian artisans saw their craft as sacred duty or simple trade. But watching him now, you know it was probably both. A woman leans from a doorway, shaking out a linen cloth. The fabric catches the last light, glowing like ghost fire. "Careful where you step," she calls. The goats have claimed the path again. She's right, 3 goats stand defiantly in the road, chewing reeds with the serene arrogance of creatures certain they'll be mummified as gods someday. You mutter a polite apology and step around them, because everyone knows it's bad luck to anger a goat before sunset. By the time you reach your own home, a small hut of mud brick with a thatched roof and a doorway low enough to make you bow as you enter the sky is bleeding into purple. Inside, the air is cooler. The floor is packed earth, swept smooth. Your few possessions rest neatly on a reed mat, a water jar, a small wooden comb, a chipped oil lamp, and a charm shaped like an eye. The Eye of Horus, symbol of protection. You touch it lightly. The surface is warm from the day's heat, as though it's been watching over you all along. You light the lamp. The flame flickers, golden and unsteady, throwing long shadows that dance across the walls. There's something comforting about it, how a single flame can push back so much darkness. You pour a bit of beer into a small clay cup and sip slowly, the taste heavy and sweet. Outside, you can hear the faint murmur of the village winding down. Donkeys braying, pots clattering, a baby crying, someone singing softly to hush it. Dinner, if you can call it that, is a stew of lentils and herbs thickened, with barley. You eat it sitting cross-legged on the floor, dipping bread into the bowl. It's not luxurious, but it's warm, and it tastes like effort and patience, two of Egypt's finest spices. As the last light fades, you step outside again. The sky has turned a deep indigo, scattered with the first stars. The air cools rapidly, carrying the faint scent of lotus and wood smoke. The village glows in patches, lamps flickering like tiny constellations at ground level. Your neighbor, an older man with skin like wrinkled papyrus, sits by his doorway, strumming a short-necked lute. The melody is slow, a lullaby for adults too tired to admit they need one. "Good day?" he asks, without looking up. "Hot," you say. "Long," he chuckles. Then it was an Egyptian day. You both watch as a small procession passes by, three women carrying offerings toward the temple by the water. Their voices rise and fall in gentle chant, words meant to coax the gods into noticing the small lights below. You can't make out all the lyrics, but one line repeats, "Let the sun return, let the heart rest." Something about that makes you exhale. Maybe that's the real magic of Egypt, it turns survival into poetry. You lie back on the cool ground, hands behind your head, watching the stars grow brighter. Orion hangs low on the horizon, the same hunter the Egyptians once called Sa. Somewhere near him, they saw Osiris, the god of death and renewal. To them, the stars weren't just lights, they were doorways. Souls of kings and workers alike glittering together in the sky. Historians still argue whether Egyptians truly believed they'd join the stars after death, or if that was poetic metaphor. But lying here, you decide it doesn't matter. The stars are patient enough to hold either truth. A soft breeze moves through the palms, carrying the smell of the river. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. Frogs croaking, distant laughter, the soft rhythm of someone grinding grain. The sounds of life, woven into one sleepy hymn. You think about the day you've lived, the heat, the labor, the laughter, the river, the goats, and realize something strange. You've stopped feeling like a visitor. The strangeness has melted into rhythm, the rhythm into belonging. The lamp flickers behind you, the Nile whispers beyond, and the heavens look down with the same calm indifference they've always shown. You breathe out slowly, the day sliding off you like dust. Tomorrow will come, the same, and not the same. But for now, you rest in this soft, ancient silence, the kind of silence that has been waiting for 4,000 years to lull someone back to sleep. And as your eyelids grow heavy, a voice from somewhere, a memory, a friend, maybe the narrator whispers, "You've made it through the day. Not bad for someone who wasn't supposed to." The night air in Egypt feels heavier than it looks. Cool, yes, but full of sound and life like the earth is breathing around you. The crickets begin first, steady and rhythmic, their chorus rising with the distant splash of the river. Frogs join in next, throaty and triumphant, and somewhere far off, a donkey brays into the darkness, offended by something only it can see. You lie there under a roof of stars so sharp they almost hum. The Milky Way stretches overhead, what the Egyptians called the winding waterway, a celestial reflection of the Nile. You stare at it until you feel dizzy, half convinced the sky itself might start to flow above you. In the distance, drums echo faintly from the temple by the riverbank. Their rhythm is slow, deliberate. The priests are beginning their nightly rites. Smoke rises in delicate ribbons, carrying the scent of frankincense and cedar. You can almost picture the scene, the tall columns, the torches flickering against hieroglyph-covered walls, the priests moving like shadows, whispering words that have been repeated for centuries. A woman passes by, your doorway with a clay lamp, her face lit in gold. She's humming softly, balancing the flame against the breeze. "They say the gods walk tonight," she murmurs when she catches you watching. "So, keep your door open just a little, in case they need to rest." You smile, and if they do, "Then you'll dream of them," she says, and keeps walking, her light bobbing like a small sun. The thought lingers. The gods walking the earth, not in thunder or lightning, but quietly, like neighbors. The Egyptians believe the line between divine and human blurs most after dark, when Ra sails through the underworld to battle chaos, and mortals are left to fend off the little darknesses of their own. You lie back, eyes half closed, listening to the shifting sounds of the village. Someone snores nearby. Another hums an old love song, slow and wistful. Somewhere, a baby laughs in its sleep. You catch the faint scent of baked bread cooling for tomorrow's dawn. Life here never truly stops, it just softens. A shadow moves across the courtyard. You tense for a moment before realizing it's a cat, sleek, silent, utterly in charge. It pads toward your doorway, tail flicking like a metronome. You watch as it curls up beside your lamp, perfectly content. Of course it is. In Egypt, cats don't live with people. People live with cats. You whisper to it, "Guardian of dreams, huh?" It blinks slowly, which in cat language probably means, "Yes, mortal. Now go to sleep." You obey. For a moment, though, your thoughts wander. You think about the farmers asleep in their huts, the fishermen rocking gently on their boats, the priests chanting by torchlight, the pharaoh dreaming in a palace that smells of myrrh and gold, all of them breathing under this same sky, all of them small and infinite at once. Historians still debate whether Egyptians saw the afterlife as a literal continuation of earthly life or an idealized version, same fields, better weather. But lying here, you realize that maybe heaven wasn't a destination for them. Maybe it was just a better night's rest. The breeze drifts through your doorway, carrying the cool scent of the river. You can hear it murmuring to itself, as if reciting prayers of its own. You think of all the stories it's witnessed, the floods, the offerings, the laughter, the mistakes. The Nile forgets nothing, but forgives everything. A cloud passes over the moon, dimming the light. For a moment, the world feels ancient and endless. You close your eyes and let yourself drift. You dream of temples built from starlight, of gods with faces of lions, ibis, crocodile, falcon, of your hands shaping clay that breathes, of your shadow etched in gold. The dream feels more real than waking life, and you understand suddenly why Egyptians filled their tombs with paintings not to remember, but to continue. When you wake, it's still dark, but quieter now. The frogs have grown tired. The crickets have slowed. The cat is gone, leaving only a faint warmth beside your lamp. You stretch, realizing you've actually slept deeply, the kind of sleep that feels earned. The stars begin to fade. The horizon blushes faintly pink. Somewhere, a rooster clears his throat for his daily announcement. The priest's drums have gone silent. The offerings are complete. Ra is rising again, victorious, as he always does. You breathe in, tasting clay and smoke and morning on your tongue. A new day is already creeping into the world. You smile, remembering the woman's words. The gods walk at night. Maybe they do. Or maybe they just sit quietly beside tired workers and keep the darkness company until dawn. Either way, it worked. You survived another day and night in ancient Egypt, and somehow that feels like worship. Before the sun fully climbs, you wake to sound. Not the shrill crow of the rooster that came and went, but the softer murmur of life returning to the streets. Voices, footsteps, laughter, pots clinking, donkeys protesting their early shift. The smell of bread baking drifts through the air, so warm and thick, it's practically a blanket. You rub your eyes, stretch your back, and push aside the woven reed curtain that serves as your door. The sky glows pale gold, and the village already hums with motion. The Nile glitters beyond the palm line, carrying morning light like a secret message. Today, you're heading to the market. Everyone is. Trade here isn't just business, it's how the world remembers you exist. You step into the narrow lane, still damp from the night's dew. Mud brick walls on either side glow amber in the early sun. A group of women pass by, balancing jars on their heads, chatting about someone's cousin's wedding and someone else's mysterious fever, which, in Egyptian terms, could mean anything from too much fish to divine intervention. A boy runs ahead of you, carrying a basket of onions so big it seems to carry him. "Make way!" he yells, with the authority of someone clearly late. You step aside just in time, laughing as he disappears around the corner. The market square opens like a sunburst, wide, noisy, alive. There's color everywhere. Linen dyed in ochre and indigo, clay pots stacked in careful pyramids, baskets of grain shining like gold dust. Chickens dart between feet, flies dart between everything else. The air smells of dates, sweat, honey, and faintly of something burning. Probably optimism. Vendors shout greetings that double as sales pitches. Fresh fish from the Nile, only slightly smaller than your neighbor's lies. Fine flax for your household, strong enough to outlast your marriage. You can't help grinning. Egyptians might worship hundreds of gods, but humor is clearly the most consistent one. You stop at a stall selling small clay amulets shaped like animals, cats, falcons, scarabs. The old woman behind the table squints at you. "Protection?" she asks. "From what?" you reply. She smirks. "That's the wrong question." You buy one anyway, a small scarab with faint green glaze. She presses it into your hand like a secret and whispers, "The dung beetle rolls the sun across the sky each morning. So, in a way, you owe him." Historians still debate whether Egyptians genuinely believed the scarab represented creation or if it was more symbolic. Either way, you decide that anyone who imagines a cosmic beetle pushing the sun deserves your respect. As you wander deeper into the market, you pass a group of barbers, offering haircuts and head shavings, ritual cleanliness and vanity intertwined. One man proudly displays a small copper razor that looks older than common sense. You politely decline his offer, which he takes as a personal insult to his ancestors. You promise to return next flood season. He doesn't believe you. At the far end, you find a scribe sitting cross-legged behind a low table. He's surrounded by small crowds, people dictating. Letters, contracts, prayers. His stylus moves quickly over papyrus. The ink, a deep, earthy black. "Write for the gods," one woman says. "Or for my husband." Same thing. The scribe doesn't even look up. You pause, watching the speed and confidence of his strokes. Every mark permanent, every mistake eternal. You wonder how many lives have been shaped or doomed by the neatness of one man's handwriting. When he looks up, he says, "You have the face of someone who wants to be remembered." You laugh. "Or someone who's still trying to make rent." He smiles faintly. "Those are the same thing." You hand him a small coin and ask him to write a simple line for you. Nothing grand, just something true. He dips his brush, nods once, and writes on a scrap of papyrus. The day ends, the river flows, and the heart remembers. He rolls it and hands it to you. "For the next time you forget why you work," he says. You tuck it safely into your tunic. It's hard to explain, but the words feel heavier than the coin you traded for them. By late morning, the market grows louder. Drums somewhere beat in time with footsteps, and a cluster of dancers performs a small ritual near a shrine. They move with slow grace, each gesture deliberate, a kind of poetry for the gods. The watching crowd claps softly, reverently. You buy a few figs, a small jug of beer, and a strip of linen dyed sky blue. It's brighter than anything you've seen in days. The merchant tells you the color was inspired by the goddess Nut, who swallows the sun each evening and births it anew each dawn. "We all wear a bit of the sky," she says. You take the linen, fold it carefully, and think how casually Egyptians live among miracles, how their mythology is not myth but language. Everything they touch means something larger. The sun creeps higher now, heat curling through the square. Merchants start to shout louder, as if competing with the temperature. The smell of hot bread returns, blending with incense from the temple. You feel the slow tug of fatigue again, the warmth, the noise, the sheer aliveness of it all. Before heading home, you stop by the water's edge. A group of children float little reed boats, pretending to be merchants sailing for foreign lands. One girl waves a stick proudly and declares herself Queen of Punt. You laugh, and she scowls with convincing royal authority. You kneel and dip your hands into the river, washing away the dust and the faint stickiness of dates. The coolness surprises you, wakes you. The Nile glints like a mirror in motion, reflecting both sky and eternity. You think, you've eaten bread baked by the same sun that fed these crops, drunk beer from the same water that fed these people, and now you stand in the same light that watched them live, work, and dream. You dry your hands and whisper to yourself, maybe that's the real immortality. The wind off the water carries the scent of lilies. Somewhere, a temple bell rings noon. You take a deep breath, turn toward the shimmering horizon, and begin the slow walk home, where rest and another evening of ancient wonder awaits. The sun is high again, blazing without mercy. Even the air seems to shimmer with exhaustion. After the bustle of the market, the world slows, voices soften, footsteps fade, and the Nile's whisper becomes the only thing that moves with ease. You find yourself walking toward the edge of the village, drawn by the silhouette of something older and quieter. The temple. It stands half in shadow, half in sunlight, as though it can't decide whether to join the living or stay with the gods. The walls rise pale and solemn, carved with figures that seem to breathe when the light hits them right. Their painted colours have faded, but you can still make out ochre skin, blue crowns, white robes, a mural of devotion held together by centuries of dust and awe. You pause at the entrance. The smell greets you first. Incense, old stone, and the faint tang of burnt oil. A priest steps out, his head shaved smooth, his robe linen white and spotless. He nods politely. You seek shade or blessing? He asks. Whichever costs less, you reply, only half joking. He chuckles softly, but it's there, and gestures for you to enter. Inside, the light dims to a honeyed glow. Shafts of sun spill through narrow slits, catching the smoke and turning it into liquid gold. The air feels thick, almost alive. You breathe in slowly, letting the coolness cling to your skin. At the far end of the hall stands a statue of Amun, tall and still, the god's eyes outlined in deep black coal. The priest kneels before it, murmuring prayers in a rhythm so steady it could outlast the river. You stand quietly, watching the ritual, the pouring of oil, the lighting of incense, the gentle ringing of a copper bell. Historians still debate whether these daily temple rites were meant to feed the gods or simply remind them that humans were paying attention. Watching the priest move with careful grace, you decide it's probably both. You can't ignore what you must rely on. He turns slightly toward you. You're not from here, he says, his voice echoing faintly. Not exactly, you answer. Just passing through. He nods, as if that's the most normal thing in the world. Then you'll understand, he says, that we keep our gods busy. Without attention, even divinity grows lazy. You smile. So, like children, he actually laughs this time. Exactly. The sound bounces off the stone like something rare and valuable. He gestures to the walls. Every image here is a story. Every story, a kind of map. The body may stay, but the name travels forever. You step closer to the carvings. Rows of hieroglyphs stretch across the stone, tidy and eternal. You recognize a few eyes, birds, suns, but most remain a mystery. You run your fingers lightly across them, feeling the grooves where ancient hands once traced meaning. Each mark seems to hum faintly, as if it remembers every prayer ever whispered here. The priest approaches the statue again, refilling the oil lamp at its feet. We feed the flame, he says softly, so the world remembers to wake up tomorrow. There's something profoundly tender in that. You think of the workers you met, the scribe, the children by the Nile. Maybe every act, fishing, farming, writing, praying, is just another way of feeding the same flame. Outside, the light shifts again. You step into the courtyard, where two young acolytes are sweeping sand from the steps with palm branches. They glance up and bow, awkward but sincere. One of them whispers to the other that the foreigner walks like a god but sweats like a farmer. You pretend not to hear, but smile anyway. In the far corner, you notice something peculiar. A cluster of broken statues, their faces worn away by time. A hand without a body, a crown without a head. The priest follows your gaze. Old gods, he says simply. We don't destroy them. We just let them sleep. There's a strange peace in that philosophy. You think of all the forgotten things that built this world, the nameless builders, the faded paintings, the prayers lost to dust, and realize Egypt doesn't erase its past, it layers it. You thank the priest, and he blesses you with a gesture of the hand. Walk in light, he says, even when it blinds you. Outside again, the brightness hits you like a wave. You blink against it, the temple's cool, still clinging to your skin. The village hums in the distance, a chorus of daily life calling you back. You walk slowly, your thoughts heavier but your steps somehow lighter. You pass a wall carved with the image of a pharaoh kneeling before the gods. His posture is humble, but his crown is impossibly tall. Its strange kings here bow to gods who barely seem to notice. Yet they keep bowing. You wonder if that's faith or habit. As you near the river again, you glance back once more. The temple stands silent and golden in the light, its shadow stretching across the sand, like an old memory. For a moment, you think you hear the faint echo of chanting carried on the wind. Or maybe it's just the river whispering through reeds, telling its own version of eternity. You stop to drink from your clay jug, the water cool and earthy. A dragonfly hovers near the rim, glinting like a piece of living lapis. You watch it dart away toward the temple. You whisper to no one in particular. You really do keep your gods busy here. The river answers with a soft lap against your feet. And somehow, that feels like agreement. The afternoon drifts into that shimmering hour where everything moves slowly but glows fiercely, where shadows stretch long but the heat still clings like an unwelcome relative. You make your way along the narrow path by the river, the same one you took this morning, though it feels like an entirely different world now. The air hums with insects, reeds sway like they're gossiping about you, and somewhere upriver the faint rhythm of wooden hammers echoes through the heat. Curiosity leads you toward the sound. A small crowd of workers hunch over a shaded platform near the water, carving something into stone. When you get closer, you see it. A half-finished slab covered in rows of hieroglyphs, small, neat, deliberate marks that look as though the rock itself is learning to speak. The man overseeing the work turns at your approach. His eyes are lined, not from anger but from sunlight and thought. He's dressed plainly, though a reed brush tucked behind his ear gives him away a scribe. His voice, when he greets you, is smooth and dry as papyrus. You look like someone who asks too many questions, he says. Only the necessary ones, you reply. Good, he murmurs. That's what keeps the gods entertained. He offers you a seat on a broken column nearby. The stone is warm, but surprisingly comfortable. You watch as the workers chip the words into permanence, each stroke slow and exact. The scribe explains. They're recording the deeds of a noble who donated grain during the last flood. He wants his generosity to outlive him, he says. A common illness among the powerful. You smile. And do the gods care about these records? He shrugs. Historians still debate that. His eyes glint, and you can't tell if he's mocking you or himself. But I suspect the gods care less about records and more about attention. Writing is our way of keeping them awake. You watch as he takes a fresh reed and dips it into a pot of black ink. On a small piece of limestone, he draws a perfect eye in one smooth motion. The Eye of Horus, symbol of protection and vision. This, he says softly, reminds us that nothing escapes the seen or unseen world. Even a careless thought leaves a mark somewhere. He hands you the stone. The eye gleams faintly, almost alive. Take it, he says. You've seen enough of our Egypt today to understand that memory is a living thing. You hesitate. Won't someone need it? He smiles. Everything written here will be forgotten eventually. That's the curse of record keepers. We know that eternity is terribly short. His words settle into the air like dust. You look at the workers, their hands steady as they carve. You think of how many generations have done this before men and women who wrote names that no one can read now, for gods no one prays to, in a language that once ruled time itself. And yet here they are, writing again. You glance down at the carved eye in your palm. It feels warm, though it shouldn't. What happens, you ask, when the stone fades, when even this disappears? The scribe looks toward the river. Then the river remembers. It always does. A breeze passes, carrying the smell of wet clay and papyrus. A few reeds sway against the shore, whispering as if they're agreeing with him. You realize then that Egypt's real archive isn't the temples or scrolls. It's the air, the water, the dust. Everything written eventually dissolves into the landscape, and somehow, that's enough. The scribe returns to his work, calling out corrections to the carvers in that mixture of patience and quiet authority unique to those who know they're preserving illusions. Not too deep, he says. Eternity prefers subtlety. You stay for a while, watching. The rhythmic scrape of bronze chisels becomes almost musical. A young apprentice spills ink on his arm, panics, and tries to wipe it with sand, which only makes it worse. The scribe sighs with theatrical despair. Even the gods have apprentices, he mutters, and everyone laughs softly. You ask if he believes in the afterlife. His hands pause for a fraction of a second before resuming their movement. Belief is a habit, he says finally. I copy spells for the dead all day, and sometimes I wonder if they're for the dead or for us. Maybe we just like to imagine someone still reading after we're gone. You sit in silence after that, listening to the chisels speak. Each sound feels like a heartbeat carved into eternity. When you finally stand to leave, the scribe nods without looking up. Keep the eye, he says. When you sleep, place it near your head. You'll dream clearly, or not at all. You thank him and step back into the sunlight. The world outside feels louder now, the cicadas, the laughter from the river, the distant bleating of goats. The slab of stone gleams faintly behind you, catching the sun like it's swallowing fire. You glance down once more at the eye of Horus in your hand. For a moment, you think you see it blink. Just once, slow and certain. You chuckle quietly. All right, you whisper to it. Keep an eye on me then. As you walk away, the scribe's voice calls out faintly behind you, blending with the wind. Everything written becomes part of the river. Don't forget that. You smile, tucking the stone into your tunic. Pocket. The Nile murmurs beside you, patient as ever, and you realize you're not just walking through Egypt anymore. It's walking through you. The road curves toward the horizon, and ahead you spot the faint outline of scaffolding wooden poles crisscrossed like ribs against the sky. The rhythmic thud of chisels and hammers grows louder, echoing over the plain. Curiosity draws you closer, though part of you already knows what you'll find. Every Egyptian story eventually leads here to stone, to sweat, to something that wants to last forever. You arrive at the worksite and see them. Hundreds of laborers moving in perfect rhythm, pulling ropes, hauling blocks, shouting to one another in the hot wind. The ground vibrates under the weight of ambition. Before you stands the skeleton of a monument, a tomb, perhaps, or a small pyramid for a nobleman trying to look slightly more important than he was. The air tastes of limestone dust and sun-baked effort. A foreman, bare-chested and sunburned, waves as you approach. Careful where you step. These stones remember clumsy feet. His grin takes the sting out of the warning. You climb a small rise to get a better view. The structure gleams pale gold in the sunlight, every edge sharp against the blue sky. Men chant in unison as they drag a block up an inclined ramp, voices weaving into a rhythm that keeps them steady. It's not a song of joy exactly, but something older, part prayer, part endurance spell. The chorus repeats, like the heartbeat of civilization. Pull, breathe, rise. A man beside you, his face streaked with dust, notices your awe. We make the bones of eternity, he says, not bragging, but simply stating a fact. One block at a time. You nod. And what happens when eternity forgets? He laughs softly, shaking his head. Then someone builds again. We like to keep eternity busy. Nearby, a group of craftsmen carves hieroglyphs into a finished wall. You recognize the careful precision you saw in the scribe earlier. Each stroke of the chisel is deliberate, measured, and final. One of the carvers pauses, brushing stone dust from an inscription. You read over his shoulder, something about a noble's journey through the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise where all labor is rewarded and no one sweats unless they want to. Historians still debate whether the field of reeds was a physical belief or a metaphor for the hope of fairness. Watching these men work, you suspect it was simply wishful thinking, disguised as theology. The foreman walks over with a jug of water, offering you a drink. The water tastes warm and faintly metallic, but it feels like a miracle anyway. You're lucky to see it in progress, he says. Most only come when the gods have already moved in. You glance at the half-built structure. It's beautiful, you say, he grins. It's heavy, he corrects. He gestures toward a group of men using wooden sledges to drag another block, toward the ramp. We pour water before the sleds, he explains. Keeps the sand flat, easier to move. He shrugs. Simple trick, the kind that builds eternity. You watch the motion repeat again and again, endless as the Nile. The teamwork is astonishing, each person moving as though guided by a shared breath. You realize, suddenly, that you're witnessing one of the most advanced engineering efforts on Earth, and none of them would ever call it that. They'd call it duty. A child runs past carrying a jug of beer for the workers. Someone ruffles his hair, another tosses him a date. He beams with the solemn pride of an assistant to immortality. You can't help but smile. Egypt raises even its children to build forever. The foreman wipes his brow and squints at the horizon. The stone never forgives impatience, he says. You rush. It cracks. You take your time. It lasts. Same with people. You wonder how many centuries it will stand the tomb, the carvings, the memories embedded in this place. You wonder how many names will fade before the stone itself does. And then, with a strange shiver, you realize, even if the monument someday crumbles, its dust will still mix with the Nile, will still settle into the mud, will still feed the next generation of builders. You think of the priest's words at the temple. We don't destroy old gods, we let them sleep. Maybe these monuments aren't memorials to death at all, but places where memory rests between awakenings. The chant continues. Pull, breathe, rise. It's hypnotic. You could almost fall asleep standing there, lulled by the rhythm of effort. The sun dips lower, turning the stones amber. Every face glows with the same light. Equal under Ra's gaze worker, overseer, traveler, god. Someone near you drops a tool, curses softly, then laughs at himself. The laughter spreads like a breeze, brief but real. Even here, under the weight of eternity, there's humor. You realize the Egyptians. We have mastered something we haven't. They take their work seriously, but never themselves. When you turn to leave, the foreman calls out, "If you pass the temple again, tell the gods we're still building." You wave. "They'll hear you anyway," he grins. "Then maybe they'll send us cooler weather." You walk back down the slope, dust rising around your ankles, the chants echoing behind you. The structure gleams against the fading sky, a monument still being born. At the base of the hill, you pause by a pile of unused stones. They're rough, uncarved, waiting. You run your fingers along one and feel the faint vibration of hammer blows still trapped within it. For a second, you imagine it whispering, "I'll outlive you, but I'll remember you." You whisper back, "Fair trade." The light softens, the workers' silhouettes blur against the sunset, and the sound of chisels becomes a lullaby. The air smells of dust, sweat, and history itself, warm, heavy, unhurried. As you head back toward the river, you carry the rhythm with you. Pull, breathe, rise until it matches the beat of your own heart. The builders fade behind you, still sculpting dust into dreams, their voices mingling with the hum of the eternal Nile. By the time you reach the village again, the sun has begun to melt into the horizon. The world turns honey-colored, the air softening after the long tyranny of heat. Smoke rises from hearths and cooking fires, curling through the palm fronds like spirits stretching after sleep. You smell roasted fish, fresh bread, onions, beer, and something faintly sweet dates simmered in honey. Tonight is special. You remember overhearing the potter earlier. There would be a Peret feast, an offering day, when families share food not only among the living, but with their ancestors too. A meal for both worlds. You follow the laughter toward the riverbank, where the heart of the village gathers. Torches burn low in clay sconces, their light flickering across smiling faces. Children chase one another between mats laid with food. Old women sit cross-legged, fanning themselves lazily. Cats weave through the crowd, patient opportunists waiting for divine scraps. A woman you met at the market waves you over, offering a clay bowl piled with bread and lentils. "Eat," she insists. "The ancestors enjoy it more if we don't starve first." You take a seat beside her. The ground is warm, the night alive with conversation. Someone passes a jug of beer, its foam thick and yeasty, and you drink gratefully. The bread is coarse, the lentils smoky, and somehow everything tastes better under open stars. At the far end of the gathering, families have built small shrines, just humble platforms of stone and clay, decorated with flowers, candles, and small figurines. Some place bits of food near them: fish, onions, pieces of bread. Others pour a trickle of beer into the earth. The gestures are soft, practiced, full of love. You watch. A little girl help her grandmother light an oil lamp. She holds her breath as the wick catches, eyes wide with reverence. "That's for great-grandfather," the grandmother says. "He loved the smell of onions." You can't help but smile. Historians still debate whether Egyptians believed the dead truly consumed these offerings, or if the act was purely symbolic. Watching this scene, you think both answers miss the point. Whether or not the dead eat, they're clearly fed with memory, with care, with presence. As the feast continues, the musicians begin. A man plucks a lute, another beats a small drum, and a woman sings in a low, winding melody that sounds halfway between prayer and lullaby. The rhythm sways like the Nile itself, slow, deep, hypnotic. People clap softly in time, some humming along. A few children, too sleepy to resist the music, curl up beside their mothers and drift into dreams. Someone tells a story, it begins as gossip and ends as myth. You realize, Egyptians blur that line effortlessly. The tale is about a fisherman who once offended Sobek, the crocodile god, by stealing fish from sacred waters. The punishment: every night, the man dreamed he was the fish instead. For years. He woke up wiser, the storyteller finishes, grinning, and vegetarian. Laughter ripples through the group. Even the cats seem amused. You lean back on your elbows, the torchlight warm against your face. The sky is velvet black now, the stars bright enough to make you feel small in the best way. You spot the familiar shape of Orion Sar again climbing the eastern horizon, chasing the same eternity he's been hunting for millennia. Beside you, the market woman breaks off a piece of bread and tosses it toward the shrine. "For those who worked harder than we do," she murmurs. You follow her gaze to the offerings, now glowing softly in torchlight. The air feels charged, not eerie, but alive. For a moment, you swear you see movement among the shadows. Not ghosts exactly, but presence, a kind of echo of everyone who ever lived here, overlapping time like translucent layers of light. You don't feel fear, you feel belonging. The woman nudges you. "You see them too?" You nod slowly. "Maybe." "Good," she says. "Means they see you back." The musicians slow their rhythm, letting the notes stretch into the night. A breeze rolls in from the river, cool and smelling faintly of silt and lotus. Somewhere downstream, a crocodile grunts a reminder that eternity also has teeth. People begin to pack away food, laughing softly, carrying the leftover bread home for tomorrow. The fire crackles low. Someone stirs it, sending up sparks that rise like tiny souls trying to reach the stars. You stay seated for a while longer, watching the embers fade. The offerings gleam faintly in the dark: bread, onions, flowers, and light. Simple things, eternal things. When you finally stand, you whisper a small thanks to whoever might. To be listening to the workers, the priests, the river, the stars, the ones who walked before you. Egypt seems to breathe around you in reply. The woman calls after you as you leave. "Don't forget to eat something sweet before sleep. It brings good dreams." You grin. "What happens if I don't?" She shrugs. "Then you dream of taxes." You laugh all the way back to your hut, the smell of roasted fish still hanging in the air, the drums fading into the hum of crickets. The village quiets, the torches die one by one, and the night folds itself around you like linen. In the silence that follows, you swear you can still hear faint laughter from both worlds, the living and the remembered sharing the same soft, endless evening by the river. The dawn rises quiet, muted by a thin veil of mist. The village sleeps heavier after last night's feast. Even the roosters sound reluctant to resume their divine duties. You wake with a slow stretch, your limbs stiff but content. The smell of incense still clings faintly to the air, sweet, smoky, and comforting. Outside, the sky glows with that soft grey pink that only Egypt seems to own, as though the gods painted the horizon just once and decided that was enough. Today, you follow a different pull, the path that winds beyond the palms and toward the necropolis, the place of the dead. The villagers speak of it quietly, not with fear but with a kind of respect usually reserved for kings or thunderstorms. The path turns from packed dirt to pale sand. Each step feels heavier, not because the ground resists you, but because the silence does. The air itself seems to hold its breath. The Nile's whisper fades behind you, replaced by the dry hiss of wind over stone. Ahead, half buried, tomb entrances yawn like mouths that have forgotten how to close. You pause before the first one, a low, rectangular doorway cut into the earth. Hieroglyphs are carved around the frame, their edges worn smooth. You can make out the faint outline of an offering scene. A seated figure accepting bread and beer from smaller, kneeling ones. You run your fingers along the carving. The grooves are cool, almost damp, as though the stone still remembers being alive. You duck inside. The air is thick and still, carrying the faint mineral scent of centuries. Your eyes adjust slowly. The chamber opens before you. A single room with painted walls and a small stone altar in the center. The colors, though faded, still glow faintly. Ochre skin, blue water, green fields, gold suns. The dead, it seems, were promised an eternity in full color. A figure painted on the far wall catches your eye, a man rowing a boat across a sky of deep blue. The stars above him shimmer faintly in the lamplight. Beneath, a line of text curves like a wave. You can't read it, but you know what it says. You've heard it in stories and songs already. May your soul sail safely through the night, and may the morning know your name. Historians still debate whether Egyptians truly believed their tombs were literal maps for the afterlife or symbolic guides for remembrance. Standing here, surrounded by the calm persistence of paint and stone, it feels like both. The walls hum faintly, not with sound, but with attention. Someone loved this man enough to make sure eternity wouldn't forget his face. You light your small oil lamp and look closer. Along one side, there are scenes of daily life. Ploughing fields, baking bread, fishing. You realize they're almost identical to the world outside. Heaven, apparently, looks suspiciously like Tuesday. You smile at the thought, a paradise where nothing changes, except maybe the heat. A faint scraping sound breaks the silence. You turn. Heart, skipping, but it's only a small lizard darting across the floor. Its tail flicks like a whisper as it vanishes into a crack in the wall. You exhale. Egypt loves a good scare. It keeps the tourists humble. Further inside, the air cools. You find a small stone sarcophagus, its lid half shifted by time. A faint smell of resin lingers. You don't open it, you're curious. Not cursed, but you rest your hand on the lid and whisper a quiet greeting. You built something that lasted. You say, that's more than most of us can claim. The silence answers, but kindly. You sit for a moment beside the altar, letting the stillness settle around you. It's strange how peaceful this place feels. Not morbid, not frightening, just resting. A pause between stories. You realize that to the Egyptians, death wasn't an ending. It was a continuation of the same long, careful work. Planting, feeding, remembering. You take out the little Eye of Horus stone the scribe gave you. It catches the faint light, gleaming like a heartbeat. You set it gently on the altar. For your next journey, you murmur to the unseen owner of the tomb, "Watch the river for me." For a moment, the flame of your lamp flickers, as though a breeze had passed where none should exist. You smile. "You're welcome," you whisper. When you step back outside, the sunlight feels almost blinding. The desert spreads wide and quiet, its dunes like frozen waves. In the distance, you can see other tombs, some small, some grand, all waiting with patient dignity. A priest stands near one, arranging lotus flowers in a clay jar. He looks up and nods. "You spoke to them?" he asks simply. "I think so," you say. "Or they spoke to me." He smiles faintly. "Same thing. They like to be remembered." You walk with him for a while. He tells you that each tomb is a doorway, not a prison. The body stays, he says, but the spirit visits when it likes. Sometimes to watch over us, sometimes to laugh at us. You glance back at the rows of doorways fading into the sunlit sand. So they never really leave? Would you? He asks gently. You don't answer. You both know the truth. No one truly leaves Egypt. It holds you, softly, the way the Nile holds every grain of silt it's ever touched. As you descend the path back toward the river, you feel lighter. The fear you expected never came. Only calm. Only the quiet sense that you've been allowed, for a moment, to step between worlds, and that both of them were at peace with your presence. At the edge of the palm grove, you turn for one last look. The tombs shimmer in the heat like mirages, neither fully there nor gone. You imagine them sighing in the sunlight, whispering among themselves, still here, still remembered. And in your chest, something whispers back. So am I. You smile. Then, like every Egyptian before you, you follow the sound of the river home. The air grows cooler as you, to return toward the Nile, the heat of the necropolis replaced by the soft breath of water. The sky glows bronze now, streaked with rose and violet, as if the day itself were painting a farewell. You walk slowly, each step stirring the dry scent of dust and reeds. The sound of the river rises to meet you, a low, steady murmur, like someone ancient humming under their breath. By the bank, fishermen are preparing their nets for the evening catch. Their silhouettes bend gracefully over the water, pulling ropes, tying knots, speaking in that quiet shorthand of men who know one another's rhythms better than speech. One raises a hand in greeting. You've walked far, he says. Farther than I meant to, you admit. He grins, showing white teeth against sunburned skin. That's what the river does. It makes you wonder until you remember you're supposed to stop. You sit beside him on the worn wooden dock, feet dangling above the water. The surface glows orange with reflected fire, rippling like molten glass. Small boats drift lazily by, one loaded with amphorae, another with baskets of grain. Each movement of the oars sends a soft splash through the still air, as hypnotic as a heartbeat. Does it ever rest? You ask, nodding toward the river. The fisherman chuckles. The Nile? It rests when we stop talking about it. He pulls up a small clay pot filled with bait and gestures for you to help. The smell isn't exactly divine, but there's something grounding about it, earth, salt, and persistence. You mimic his gestures, clumsy but willing. He laughs kindly when you drop the line too soon. Don't rush, he says. You can't command the river. You can only suggest. You sit together in companionable silence. A flock of egrets passes overhead, their wings white against the fading light. The fisherman hums a low tune, no words, just a melody shaped by water and waiting. You find yourself swaying slightly in rhythm. The river, he says, after a while, remembers everything, but it forgives faster than people. You look down at the water, watching how easily it swallows the past, the footprints at the edge, the petals floating from last night's offerings, the faint trail of your own reflection. Does it forgive even what we don't? You ask. He shrugs. It has no choice. That's why it keeps moving. Historians still debate whether the Nile's yearly flooding was seen as wrath or renewal, a divine punishment or a promise. Sitting here, you think the answer is neither. The Nile simply is. It gives, it takes, it repeats. And in that repetition lies the oldest kind of mercy. The fisherman pulls on his line, checking for tension. Nothing. He doesn't seem disappointed. Sometimes, he says, it's enough just to wait. You follow his gaze upriver, where the sun has nearly disappeared. The reflection of the light stretches across the water like a molten path leading straight into night. You imagine what it must have been like thousands of years ago, when priests stood at these same banks, reading omens from ripples, measuring floods, calling it magic. Maybe it was magic, and still is. The fisherman reels in his line, untangles the hook, and begins to pack up. Come back tomorrow, he says. The river will look the same, but it never is. You nod, smiling. I think I understand that. Good, he says. Then you're halfway to being Egyptian. You thank him, and he waves without looking back, his small boat gliding smoothly into the dusk. The ripples he leaves behind shimmer for a long moment, then vanish completely. You stay a little longer, alone with the river. The first stars emerge overhead, faint and shy at first, then bolder. The water mirrors them, turning the Nile into a sky you could almost fall into. You dip your hand into it cool, silken, alive, and feel the current slide against your skin like a heartbeat older than language. You whisper softly. You remember me too, won't you? A breeze stirs, rippling the surface in answer. When you stand, your clothes cling slightly with mist, your hair heavy with the smell of water and clay. The path home glows faintly under starlight. The village lamps blink like sleepy eyes in the distance. You walk slowly, hearing the river's pulse echo behind you. For the first time, you realize the Nile isn't just Egypt's lifeblood, it's its memory. And by stepping into it, even for a moment, you've left a piece of yourself behind. As you near the palm grove, the last edge of sunlight slips beneath the horizon. The day exhales, and so do you. The night will bring its own lessons, and tomorrow another chapter of this endless, gentle story. For now, though, the river whispers one final word into the dark. Wait. The evening has ripened fully by the time you reach the village. The air hums with warmth, sweetened by wood smoke and jasmine. Every home seems to be glowing. Lamps flicker in windows, torches burn in doorways, and reflections shimmer across the river like a second sky trembling on the surface. It's festival night. You can feel it before you see it. Music drifts through the air, flutes, drums, and soft laughter weaving together like a tapestry of sound. The Nile itself seems to listen, holding its breath, its black water gleaming with the light of 1,000 tiny flames. You follow the crowd toward the riverbank, where the entire village has gathered. Children dance barefoot in the sand, their faces painted with streaks of ochre and blue. Women carry baskets of flowers. Men hold long poles with oil lamps swinging gently at the top. Even the elders, those who move slowly and speak rarely, smile tonight. An old priest stands by the water's edge, his voice deep and calm. The lanterns, he says, carry our wishes where the river carries the stars. He dips the first flame into the Nile. The light floats outward, drifting silently, on the current. Then another follows, then 10, then hundreds. The water fills with points of gold, each flickering softly, each reflecting a breath, a prayer, a small piece of hope. You kneel near the shore, your knees sinking into the cool mud. A young boy offers you a lantern, a small clay bowl with a reed wick. Make a wish, he says matter-of-factly, as though it's an errand for the gods. You hesitate. What do you even wish for in a world like this one, so ancient and full that it already seems to know you better than you know yourself? Finally, you whisper something simple. For time to be gentle. You place the lantern on the water and watch as it drifts away, caught among 1,000 others. It floats slowly at first, then glides into the current, spinning lightly. For a brief moment, it looks as if the river is burning not in destruction, but in offering. Around you, voices rise in song. The melody is soft, repeating, almost hypnotic. You don't understand every word, but you know what it means. Gratitude, memory, continuity. Egypt's favorite trinity. A woman nearby catches your gaze and smiles. This is for Hapi, she explains, the god of the Nile, bringer of floods, father of fertility and balance. We thank him for the water, and for remembering to come back every year. You nod. And if he doesn't? She shrugs, smiling wider. Then we sing louder. You laugh, because of course that's the answer. Egypt doesn't conquer uncertainty, it outlasts it. The song grows louder, the rhythm steadier. Drums echo off the water, mingling with the flicker of lamps. The river looks alive, like it's breathing light. You feel the heat on your face and the cool mist on your hands. The balance that defines this place, life and death, light and shadow, work and rest, always moving, always returning. Historians still debate how much of ancient Egyptian ritual was religion, and how much was habit, whether they believed their gods, listened, or simply found comfort pretending they did. Watching this moment, you know the difference doesn't matter. Belief isn't about certainty, it's about rhythm, about showing up, again and again, until meaning grows from repetition. A small girl wades knee-deep into the shallows, holding her lantern high. Her mother scolds gently, but doesn't pull her back. The child sets the bowl down with careful hands, whispering something you can't hear. Her lamp joins the others, glowing brightly before merging with the drifting constellation. The priest raises his staff. "The river carries all," he calls out. "What we give, it returns." As if on cue, a faint breeze ripples across the surface, making every flame tremble but none go out. The crowd gasps softly, then laughs. The old priest's eyes gleam. "See?" he says. He's listening. You find yourself smiling without meaning to. It's hard not to. Surrounded by this warmth, this living proof that humans can, to make beauty from faith, even if it's made of nothing more than oil and reeds. The music softens. People begin to drift away, still talking, still glowing. The lanterns keep floating, spreading farther downriver, little stars breaking loose from the sky. You stay behind a while longer. The water laps quietly at the shore. A cat sits beside you, watching the lights too, as if contemplating philosophy. You scratch behind its ear and whisper, "We did well tonight, didn't we?" It purrs, which feels like agreement. In the distance, one last lantern catches a current and spins faster, brighter, until it disappears into the dark. You can't tell if it went out or just drifted beyond sight. Maybe that's the point. You stand, stretching. The sand under your feet is cool now, the night soft and endless. The air smells faintly of smoke and lotus blossoms. Above you, the stars seem to echo the river below two Niles, one of water, one of fire. You whisper into the dark, "Good night, old river. Don't forget my wish." The breeze brushes your hair like a hand in reply. You turn toward home, your steps slow, unhurried. Behind you, the Nile glows softly, as if holding the memory of every human dream it's ever carried. And tonight, it carries yours too. Morning returns, as if drawn in by a steady hand. The light spills gently through your doorway, washing the floor in quiet gold. Outside, the world hums awake again, the creak of wooden wheels, the bark of traders, the musical splash of buckets being filled at the well. Yet today feels slower, softer, as though Egypt herself has decided to whisper instead of sing. You rise, still drowsy, the memory of last night's lanterns flickering behind your eyes. The scent of smoke and lotus clings faintly to your hair. On the table rests your rolled papyrus from the scribe, the one that reads, "The day ends, the river flows, and the heart remembers." You smile. It feels like a key to something you haven't yet unlocked. You decide to visit the library. Not the grand, marble kind, no. This one is humbler, tucked behind the temple near the edge of the market. The locals call it the House of Breath, because every word inside was once spoken aloud before it was written. The walk there takes you past the river again, now calm, its morning surface smooth as polished bronze. You nod to the fisherman from yesterday, who lifts a hand without pausing his work. A heron lands near his boat, folding its wings like parchment. Everything here seems made for study, even the stillness. The library greets you with the faint smell of ink, clay, and dried reeds. Inside, the air is cool, dustless. Shelves of papyrus scrolls line the walls, each bound with linen cords. A single shaft of light falls from a roof slit, illuminating a table where a young apprentice sits copying a text. The brush in his hand moves like a whisper. An old man, likely the librarian, looks up from his work and gestures for you to enter. You walk as if you're listening, he says, voice dry but kind. "Maybe I am," you reply. He nods approvingly. Then the scrolls will like you. They remember who listens. He leads you deeper inside. The walls seem to breathe here, the silence pulsing gently between the rows of shelves. You run your fingers lightly across the spines, smooth papyrus, cool to the touch, alive in their stillness. "These are copies," the old man explains. "We keep the originals sealed away. The ink fades when too many eyes stare." You ask what they contain. He smiles. "Everything worth writing, and quite a bit that isn't. Prayers, tax records, poems, recipes, medical charms, jokes that have stopped being funny. Which ones do you read most?" "The ones about time," he says simply. "It's the only thing we can't measure without lying to ourselves." He pulls a scroll from the shelf and unrolls it on the table. The ink is dark, the lines precise. The first, words, Translated roughly, read, "We are the dust of our own remembering." You sit in silence. The sentence hums inside you. The librarian continues, "When we write, we trap the wind. The ancients called it Heku, breath made solid. The gods made the world by speaking it. We imitate them when we write." Historians still debate whether the Egyptians saw writing as invention or invocation. But as the old man speaks, you can feel the truth humming between his words. That language itself was magic, a bridge between thought and being. He rolls the scroll gently and places it back on the shelf. "Would you like to try?" he asks. You hesitate. "I don't know what to say." He gestures to the empty scroll on the table. "Then let the hand move before the thought does. The ink will find the meaning." You pick up the reed pen. Its tip is soft, frayed slightly from use. You dip it into the ink, and after a moment's pause, begin to write. The letters aren't perfect. Some curve awkwardly, others wobble. But the act feels strangely natural, like remembering something your body already knew. When you finish, the librarian leans closer, reading your clumsy attempt aloud. The sound of your own words feels different when spoken, weightier, warmer. "There," he says. "Now you've left something behind." You glance at the papyrus. The ink glows faintly, still wet. "What if no one reads it?" you ask. He smiles. "Then the air will." You thank him, and he bows slightly, as though to seal the exchange. "The river carries words too," he says as you leave, "but it prefers silence. Don't forget to listen between them." Outside, the sunlight feels sharper after the dim calm of the library. You walk slowly through the village, still holding the faint scent of ink on your hands. The people bustle, as they always do, trading, laughing, calling. But you notice now how everything they do has rhythm, pattern, repetition. The pulse of the civilization that long ago decided chaos could be soothed into order simply by naming it. You pause near the riverbank, unroll your scrap of writing, and hold it up to the light. The ink gleams like obsidian. You whisper the words aloud, watching how they dissolve into the wind. For a moment, you imagine them drifting across the water, over the temples, through the reeds, joining the endless choir of Egypt's memory. The breeze answers by rippling the surface of the Nile. Just once, you smile faintly, so the air did read it after all. And for a heartbeat, you're certain the library was right. Every breath in this place, every whisper, every ripple, every sigh is another word in Egypt's great, unwritten book. The next afternoon hums with stillness. Even the cicadas have surrendered. The heat presses down so hard it feels like the sun is trying to carve its name into the world. The horizon wavers, molten and unreal. The villagers retreat into shade where they can, their movements slow and deliberate, more like drifting than walking. You find yourself drawn back toward the temple again, not for prayer but for refuge. Its walls, thick and cool, promise temporary escape from the tyranny of Ra. Inside, the air feels ancient. The stone breathes out a faint chill. You pause near a column, resting your forehead against its surface. It's smooth and steady, as though it's been waiting for centuries just to lend you that small comfort. A priest's apprentice notices you and gestures wordlessly toward a basin of water near the entrance. You thank him and splash your face. The relief is instant, almost sacred. He smiles faintly. The gods share their shade when they're in good moods, he says. Today, they must be merciful. You laugh softly. Merciful or tired? He shrugs. Perhaps both. As you follow him through the temple's interior, you notice the soft drone of chanting somewhere deeper inside. The air carries the smell of incense and melted wax. Each corridor glows faintly. The walls carved with stories. Gods steering boats through stars. Serpents devoured by the sun. Kings embraced by eternity. Every inch of this place seems to whisper, "You are small, but you matter." You stop before a painted relief of Ra in his solar bark, sailing across the sky. His face, half man, half falcon, gleams with gold that catches the thin light spilling from a rooftop vent. The priest's apprentice lowers his voice. He fights the darkness every night, he says. We light these lamps to remind him we still believe he can win. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians saw Ra's nightly battle with Apophis, the serpent of chaos, as literal or symbolic. But standing here, surrounded by flame and shadow, it's easy to see why they never separated the two. The apprentice adds more oil to the lamps, one by one, his movements methodical, almost meditative. The room brightens slowly. The gods are like us, he continues quietly. They tire, they doubt, they need reminding. That's why we serve. You ask, and what happens if you stop? He looks up, eyes glinting in the lamplight. Then they sleep. And if they sleep too long, so do we. There's no fear in his tone, just fact, spoken like someone reciting a weather pattern. You realize the Egyptians don't worship out of dread or even hope. They worship out of rhythm, out of respect for balance. It's not obedience, it's maintenance, keeping the gears of the world well-oiled with faith. He invites you to sit on a low bench near the altar. You can rest, he says. Ra doesn't mind visitors. You close your eyes for a moment. The chanting deepens. Somewhere beyond the hall, the voices weaving through the air like smoke. Each note vibrates softly through your ribs. The temple doesn't echo, it absorbs. Even silence here feels fed, full, alive. When you open your eyes again, a beam of sunlight has shifted, landing squarely on the statue's golden face. The light glints off the metal and spills across the floor, crawling slowly toward you. The apprentice sees it too. He's moving west now, he murmurs. The day's half done. You watch the beam creep across the tiles, illuminating the worn marks where countless feet have knelt. You can almost feel the weight of all those prayers, stacked like invisible bricks holding the ceiling up. The heat outside remains merciless, but here, it feels transformed, contained, sanctified. You realize suddenly that this temple is not a place to escape the sun. It's a place to honor it, to acknowledge that the same fire that burns you also sustains you. You whisper, mostly for yourself. Maybe that's the lesson of Ra, endure the burn and call it light. The apprentice smiles, as if hearing your thought. That's as good a prayer as any. For a while, you sit together in silence, watching the light fade inch by inch as Ra continues his slow descent toward evening. The walls seem to breathe again, the air pulsing with quiet life. Eventually, the apprentice stands, bowing his head slightly. When the sun leaves, the cool gods wake, he says. You should walk by the water when that happens. The moon will show you softer faces. You thank him and step back into the open air. The heat strikes immediately, but it feels different now, less like punishment, more like proof of something powerful still at work. The sky blazes copper, the world trembling under its glow. You look toward the river, its surface so bright it could blind. Somewhere, the first shadows of palm leaves stretch long and sharp over the sand. The air hums, alive, infinite, and, as you begin walking back, you think about the apprentice's words about gods who tire, about faith as maintenance, about fire as both torment and nourishment. The desert wind rises gently, swirling dust around your feet. You whisper into it, "All right, Ra, keep burning. We'll keep watching." The sun dips a little lower, and the air answers with silence that feels almost like approval. By the time the sun surrenders, the whole world exhales. The day folds into a velvet dusk, soft and forgiving. The sky bleeds from gold to mauve, from mauve to ink, and the first stars tremble awake. You walk slowly toward the Nile, feeling the temperature drop with every step. The air that roasted you all afternoon now drapes cool against your skin, carrying the faint scent of myrrh and damp reeds. The village hums again, but differently than in daylight. The noise of labor is gone, replaced by murmurs and laughter, by small songs meant not for gods, but for each other. You hear the clatter of clay cups, the soft splash of water as someone bathes in the shallows. Life shrinks, but it doesn't vanish. It just learns to whisper. You reach the riverbank. The sky's reflection shivers across its surface, a perfect mirror of the constellations above. The moon has risen thin, bright, and patient, and the fishermen's torches flicker like small floating stars. Someone has lit incense along the dock, and its smoke curls upward in threads, carrying prayers to gentler deities. The apprentice's words return to you. When the sun leaves, the cool gods wake. You watch the river a moment, listening to its slow murmur. Then you notice a small group of villagers approaching, carrying jars and baskets. They move in near silence, setting down their offerings along the edge of the water. Milk, bread, onions, flowers, small clay figures shaped like frogs and snakes. One woman kneels, her voice low and melodic. For Khonsu, she says, the moon god, the traveller of night. Another adds softly. And for Thoth, who writes the stars. The Egyptians honour night not as absence, but as balance. Where Ra's fire ruled the day, the cool gods reign now with gentler hands. You can feel their presence in the way the air itself seems to calm the world into stillness. A man beside you nods toward the water. Khonsu watches travellers, he says, even the ones who don't know where they're going. You smile. That's generous of him. He shrugs. The moon doesn't judge footsteps, only whether they keep moving. He lights a small oil lamp and sets it adrift. The flame floats, steady and slow, its reflection rippling below like a second soul. You watch until it blends with the others, tiny fireflies on a dark sea. Do you ever fear the dark? You ask him. He chuckles. We used to. Then we realized the dark was half of everything. You can't worship only light, it burns you blind. You nod, watching how easily the night accepts the river. The trees, the faces, even the flame. It doesn't devour them, it holds them. The Egyptians understood this instinctively, that the darkness isn't evil, it's rest, the world's eyelid blinking. Historians still debate whether Khonsu's nightly journey across the sky was meant as a literal path for souls, or just a poetic way to describe the moon's cycle. But here, in this moment, watching the lamps float across the water, the difference feels meaningless. Everything here, the gods, the people, the air, seems to be part of the same dream, slowly breathing itself awake. A soft breeze ripples across the water, bringing the faint sound of drums from the far bank. The rhythm is slow, almost sleepy. Boom, boom, hush, boom, boom, hush. It feels like a heartbeat syncing with the earth's. An old woman nearby whispers a charm, tracing a small circle in the air with her hand. For dreams, she says, to keep the bad ones out and the beautiful ones near. You close your eyes for a moment and let the sounds sink. In the river's hush, the drum's pulse, the murmur of distant prayers. The coolness seeps into your skin, washing away the day's heat. You can almost feel the gods breathing with you, quiet, even-tempered, ancient. When you open your eyes again, the moonlight has brightened. Everything glows silver, the palms, the water, the faces of those still kneeling in prayer. For the first time, the desert looks soft, almost tender. You kneel too, not out of obligation but gratitude. You whisper a simple sentence, half thought, half offering. Thank you for the dark. The man beside you hears it and smiles. That's a rare prayer, he says, but a wise one. You both sit there until the drums fade and the lamps drift farther downriver, carried toward unseen places. The silence that follows is deep and kind. The world feels perfectly balanced again. Fire and water, noise and hush, day and night. You stand, brushing the sand from your knees. The moon hangs high above now, white and patient, following you like a lantern as you make your way back through the sleeping village. The houses glow faintly from within, their doorways open to the breeze. Somewhere, someone sings a lullaby so soft it's almost a sigh. You pause outside your own hut, glancing once more toward the river. It shimmers faintly under Khonsu's gaze, a silver ribbon winding through eternity. You think of all the gods who've crossed it, all the prayers it's carried, all the souls who once whispered to it just as you did tonight. Good night, you murmur to the river, and thank you for not forgetting me. A small ripple answers, spreading outward into darkness. Inside, your lamp waits on the table, still warm from the day. You blow it out, leaving only moonlight to fill the room. The air smells of reeds and dreams. As you lie down, your body sinking into the woven mat, you realize something quietly extraordinary. You've stopped, feeling like a visitor. Egypt no longer feels ancient, it feels awake, breathing softly around you. The cool gods have accepted you into their rhythm, and in that rhythm, slow, calm, eternal, you finally drift to sleep. Sleep takes you easily tonight, but not silently. You drift into dreams that feel less like imagination and more like memory. Someone else's memory, or perhaps Egypt's own. You stand again at the riverbank, but everything is different. The water glows with impossible light, silver and green and gold, as though the stars above have melted into it. The air hums with low, rhythmic sound, like thousands of voices breathing in time. You realize they're not speaking words. They're remembering. Figures move along the shore, shadowed and luminous. You recognize them without knowing their names, the builder from the monument site, the scribe, the woman from the feast, even the priest's apprentice, all glowing faintly, like candlelight seen through linen. Their faces are calm, unhurried, as if eternity itself had loosened its grip. The river bends wider, slower. You see shapes within it, not reflections but scenes. A farmer tossing seed into the flooded fields. Children laughing as they chase a goat through reeds. An old woman spinning thread by firelight. Each image drifts past you like a page turning itself. The dream pulls you closer. The water laps at your feet, cool and soft. You kneel and peer into it, expecting your own reflection, but instead you see something else. 1,000 faces layered in the current. Workers, priests, dancers, hunters, mothers. All the people you've met here, and countless more. They shimmer, then fade, replaced by others. It hits you, slow and vast. This is the river's memory. Every life that's touched it still floats within it, eternal and weightless. No one is lost, not truly. A voice neither male nor female, soft as the wind speaks behind you. Do you understand now? You turn. A figure stands in the water, clothed in light so pale it almost disappears against the air. You can't see a face, only movement like a mirage in human form. I think so, you whisper. The river remembers everything. The figure nods, and it forgets nothing. That is both mercy and burden. You watch the luminous current swirl around your ankles. Is this the afterlife? A quiet laugh ripples through the air. You've been in the afterlife all along. You just call it living. You look up, startled, but the figure continues gently. The Egyptians never separated the worlds. The living feed the dead, and the dead keep the living's names. Balance is the only eternity that matters. The words settle in your chest like warm water. You feel both small and infinite. Will I be remembered? You ask. The figure doesn't answer right away. Instead, it gestures to the river, and the water brightens. You see a small flicker of light floating among the thousands, your lantern from the festival, still drifting, still burning. Yes, the voice says, because you remembered them. You kneel, overwhelmed, watching your lantern join the others. The glow deepens until it fills everything: water, air, your heartbeat. The figure steps closer, placing a hand over your chest. When you wake, it says, "Listen." The river speaks in the sound between sounds. You blink. The world blurs. The light expands, and suddenly you're no longer by the river, but lying on your mat, heart thudding gently against the silence of dawn. The air is cool. The moonlight still lingers in the corners of the room. Outside, you hear a faint ripple, though the river is too far to reach your ears. You sit up slowly, uncertain whether you dreamed or remembered. Your fingers brush the Eye of Horus charm you left on the table. It's warm, faintly pulsing with life. You step outside. The eastern sky is pale, streaked with lavender and pearl. The Nile glimmers faintly, between the palms, calm and unreadable. But now you hear it differently, not as water, but as voice. It speaks without words, murmuring softly to the dawn. All things flow, all names return. You are here. You are still here. You close your eyes, breathing in the cool air, and feel the same steady rhythm you felt in the dream. The heartbeat of the river, of Egypt, of everything that endures because it refuses to hurry. And as the first bird calls, and the sun lifts its golden edge over the horizon, you whisper the only response that feels true. I remember you too. When morning arrives, the light feels gentler, as if the sun, too, had dreamed of mercy. The air smells faintly different, sharper, saltier, carrying whispers from somewhere far beyond the palms. Even the river seems to notice, its surface rippling in slow, thoughtful circles. You wake early, before the roosters. before the chatter of the market, the village still dozes. Smoke from breakfast fires curls lazily into the sky, mingling with mist that drifts low over the Nile. Everything glows with a pale gold stillness. Today feels like it wants to begin differently. As you walk toward the river, you pass a boy sitting on the steps of his home, carving tiny figures out of soft limestone. He looks up briefly and grins. "The wind's from the sea," he says, as if that explains everything. It almost does. Egypt feels it when the wind shifts, the way the reeds bend differently, the way the air tastes like stories from foreign lands. Traders will arrive soon, bringing spices, glass, gossip, and trouble in equal measure. You can sense it in the light itself. Change, lazy but inevitable, stretching its limbs after a long sleep. Down by the water, boats are already gathering. Small wooden craft bump gently against one another, their sails fluttering weakly in the morning breeze. You recognize one of the fishermen waving at you, the same man who once told you the river forgives faster than people. His face creases into a smile. "You came early," he calls. "I wanted to see what the Nile remembers today," you say. He laughs. "Then you'll need patience. She's old and slow before breakfast." You both stand watching the water. It looks different today, restless, alive in a way that feels almost curious. The breeze lifts your hair, and you smell something faintly unfamiliar, the hint of salt, the ghost of the faraway sea. "Do you ever think about where it ends?" you ask. He squints toward the horizon. "The Nile doesn't end," he says. "It changes names." That answer sits in you like a seed. You realize that's Egypt's quiet secret. Everything here changes form, but nothing truly ends. You sit by the edge and watch as the first trade boat approaches from the north. Its sail catches the morning light like a bronze leaf. The men aboard wave, calling greetings in languages you don't know. One tosses something onto the bank, a small woven bag. It lands, softly near your feet. Inside is a handful of dried figs, sweeter and darker than any you've seen before. You take one, bite gently, and the taste is sun and smoke and salt all at once. The fisherman chuckles. The river brings gifts to those who watch it, but it always takes something back. You glance down. A petal floats past a lotus, blue and perfect. For a moment, you think it might be the same flower you saw drifting days ago. Maybe the Nile is returning what it borrowed. Maybe it's reminding you that all things borrowed eventually return. A faint clatter draws your attention. Down the bank, a group of young workers repairs the wooden planks of a barge. They work in quiet rhythm, sandals thudding, hammers tapping, voices murmuring in time. You recognize the pattern immediately. Pull, breathe, rise. The chant of the builders echoes faintly in your mind. You smile. The Nile carries not just water, but echoes. Historians still debate whether the Egyptian understanding of eternity was literal or metaphorical, whether they believed they'd truly live forever, or simply that the world would always remember the shape of their hands. But standing here, you begin to suspect the truth is simpler. They didn't need eternity to be endless. They only needed it to be rhythmic. The wind picks up, stronger now. The boat's sails strain against their ropes, eager to move. The fisherman secures his net and turns to you. "She's in a hurry today," he says, nodding toward the water. "You'd best say goodbye to whatever you meant to keep." You glance toward the far horizon. The river gleams like molten copper beneath the morning sun, a path that never ends, a voice that never tires. The lotus petal drifts farther away, spinning lightly before disappearing into the glare. You whisper, "Goodbye then," though you're not sure to whom. The fisherman gives you a knowing smile. She'll bring it back one day. Everything she takes, she carries home. Again. The breeze shifts once more, warm now, fragrant with silt and honey. The sound of the water grows louder, not rushing, just constant, confident. It feels like a heartbeat under your feet. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The wind moves through your hair, carrying the faintest whisper from the river low, endless, amused. I never stop. I just circle. When you open your eyes again, the sun has climbed higher, the mist gone, the day fully awake. The fisherman is already pushing off from shore, his oar dipping neatly into the light. You watch him drift downstream until he becomes just another shadow among hundreds, all moving with the same quiet purpose. And for a long, still moment, you simply stand there between wind and water, between motion and memory, feeling the same calm certainty that Egypt itself seems to hum every morning. Nothing is lost. Nothing is still. Everything returns. The day drifts forward, lazy and luminous. The wind that started at dawn has found its rhythm now, threading through the palms and rippling the river like a long, slow song. You walk through the village, feeling the hush, before afternoon heat reasserts itself. Dust rises under your feet, soft and shimmering. The market is quieter than usual. Many stalls are closed. The traders have sailed south with the wind. The remaining merchants lounge under shade awnings, their voices low and drowsy. You pause near the scribe's stall, the same one where you once bought that small papyrus scroll. He's still there, cross-legged, brush in hand, his movements steady as the tide. He glances up and smiles faintly. "Ah," the listener returns. You bow slightly in greeting. And the writer endures. He chuckles. "Barely. The papyrus wilts faster than my patience today." He gestures for you to sit. "Did the river keep its promise?" "It remembered," you say. "I dreamed of it." He tilts his head thoughtfully. "The river is generous with dreams. She gives them freely, though she rarely explains them." You watch his brush move across the scroll fluid, effortless, hypnotic. The characters bloom and settle like tiny waves. "Do you ever tire of writing?" you ask. He shakes his head. "How can one tire of breathing?" The reed moves, and the ink listens. It is conversation, not labor. A child approaches, tugging on his sleeve. "Write my father's name," she says. "He went to the West Bank and hasn't come back." The scribe nods gently, motioning for her to hold still. "We'll call him home then." He writes the name carefully, murmuring as the ink dries. When he finishes, he hands the scrap of papyrus to the girl. "Place it in the water," he says. "The current will find him." She runs off toward the river, clutching the small piece of written memory. You and the scribe sit in silence for a moment. "Do you believe it works?" you ask softly. He doesn't look up. Belief isn't the point. The name floats, and so does the heart. That's enough. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians' obsession with names the Ren was superstition or spiritual technology. But here, it feels simpler. To be named is to be seen. To be remembered is to live twice. The wind rises, rattling the scribe's reed pens. He glances toward the river. "They say today the dead can speak with the living," he says. "When the wind changes direction, the veil between worlds stirs." You smile faintly, "Then we should listen carefully." He nods toward the north. "Go to the shore. You'll hear them where the reeds sing loudest." You stand and thank him. The market fades behind you, replaced by the hum of insects and the low sigh of the river. The reeds sway in long, whispering arcs, brushing against one another like fingertips over harp strings. You kneel near the edge, closing your eyes. The air feels charged, warm, but electric. The sound of water folds into wind, wind into rhythm, rhythm into something almost like speech. At first, it's just noise, the rustle of leaves, the lap of waves, then softly voices emerge. Layered, distant, tender. You can't make out words, but the cadence is unmistakable. Laughter, prayer, lullaby, gossip, all at once. The wind brushes your hair and smells faintly of papyrus and bread. You hear a familiar tone, the laugh of the fisherman, the priest's careful chant, the hum of the builder's work song. It's not eerie, it's beautiful. As if the air itself is replaying the world's memory for whoever is quiet enough to listen. You whisper into the wind, "I hear you." And for a heartbeat, it stops. Everything stills: the river, the reeds, the air. Then, gently, the wind returns, brushing against your cheek like the edge of a smile. You open your eyes. Across the river, a group of women stand knee-deep in water, tossing handfuls of flower petals into the current. Their voices rise in a chant that wavers between song and speech. Those who remember are remembered. The petals float downstream, glinting like tiny suns. You whisper the words back to yourself. Those who remember are remembered. Something in you settles. The dream from last night. The river's whisper, the lantern's light, they all fold neatly into that one truth. You don't have to be eternal. You only have to be recalled. When you turn to leave, the wind shifts again. You hear one last voice, faint but unmistakable, carried from nowhere and everywhere at once. Keep listening. You pause, smiling, always. The reeds bow in agreement as the wind moves on. The sound of the river swells, rich and endless, and for a moment, you can't tell if it's outside you or inside you. You walk back toward the village slowly, the phrase echoing in your chest with every step, an ancient promise renewed in your bones. Those who remember are remembered. By the time you return to the village, the day is sliding into amber. The air smells of earth cooling after heat, of clay ovens and smoke, of sweet grain and slow conversation. The light has turned syrup thick. Even the shadows move lazily. Everything children, cats, dust seems to be glowing a little from within. You pass the scribe's stall again. He is packing away his brushes. The table is littered with fragments of papyrus, each carrying someone's wish, confession, or remembrance. He glances up as you pass and calls softly. The wind will sleep soon. Write your name before it does. You stop. Why? He smiles. Because tomorrow it will be only air again. He presses a square of papyrus and a thin reed into your hand. The ink is still warm from the sun. You hesitate. For a long time, you have been walking through other people's memories. Priests, workers, farmers, gods, but not your own. Finally, you bend and write a single word. Your name. The letters look fragile, almost uncertain, but they feel real in your hand. The scribe nods in approval. Now you belong to the record. He gathers his tools and adds, almost kindly, "It doesn't matter who reads it. It matters that it was written." You tuck the papyrus into your linen belt and make your way to the river one last time. The sun is halfway gone now, its reflection burning a golden path across the water. Along the shore, families prepare their evening offerings. Tiny bowls of beer, crumbs of bread, a few onions glistening with oil. Children toss petals into the current and chase them as they float. The laughter carries far. You sit on the same worn dock where you first watched the fishermen haul in their nets. The wood is warm beneath you, the river murmuring softly below. For a long time, you simply watch boats gliding home, birds cutting low against the light, the horizon breathing. Then you take out the papyrus, hold it over the water, and whisper your name, aloud. It sounds different here, slower, fuller, as if the river itself were echoing it back. You set the scrap gently on the surface. The ink begins to bleed immediately, dark veins unfurling through the paper until it becomes transparent. Your name drifts for a moment, then dissolves completely, absorbed into the current. You feel no loss, only a strange lightness. A woman standing nearby sees you watching the water. "First time you've given your name to the Nile?" she asks. "Yes," you admit. "It feels like letting go." She nods. "That's what names are for. We build them so the wind can carry them. The river knows what to do after that." Historians still debate whether the ancient ritual of name casting, offering written words to the water, was a spell for remembrance or a symbolic erasure of self. But here, surrounded by evening light and the slow breath of the Nile, you understand it's both. To be remembered, you must first be released. The last sunlight fades, replaced by the violet hush of twilight. The river turns the color of polished bronze. Somewhere, a priest's horn calls from the temple, signaling the closing of the day. The sound drifts over the water, low and sweet. You whisper quietly to the current, "Carry it wherever you carry everything else." The river answers with a single ripple that travels far beyond sight. When you rise to leave, the moon has already taken its place above the palms. The village lamps flicker awake one by one, tiny constellations mirroring the sky. People begin to sing again, not the lively songs of festivals, but soft ones, made of gratitude and fatigue. You walk slowly back through the narrow streets, hearing bits of conversation, the scrape of pottery, the gentle hiss of fire. Everything feels suspended between worlds. Perfectly balanced, the living, the remembered, the sleeping, all breathing the same air. At your doorway, you pause. The night wind moves through the reeds, whispering your name, not perfectly, not clearly, but enough. You smile. The river kept its promise. Inside, the lamp waits. You light it once more, not for sight but for companionship. The flame steadies quickly, reflecting in your eyes like a small, patient star. You lie down, listening to the hum of distant frogs and the faint rush of the current. The world feels round, finished, kind. You think of everyone you've met, the farmer, the priest, the scribe, the fisherman, and realize they're all part of the same sentence. Egypt has been writing for thousands of years. A name whispered to water, a story remembered by wind, a life folded into rhythm. And in that rhythm, you finally rest. Morning comes like a sigh, not a declaration. The light slips softly across your floor, gentle and white, touching the lamp that still smells faintly of smoke. You wake slowly, not from restlessness, but from a calm too complete to hold forever. Outside, the birds begin their measured chorus, 3 notes. Pause, 3 notes again, as if rehearsing the first song of creation. You step outside. The air is clear, washed clean by some invisible hand. The world feels new and old in equal measure. The palms sway lazily, their leaves clattering like polite applause. A cat stretches on the wall and regards you with that same half-divine indifference you've come to recognize as the national temperament. You begin to walk, no goal, just motion. The village stirs quietly around you. Women grind grain on low stones, their rhythmic motions keeping time with the wind. A child carries water from the well, spilling half of it but looking immensely proud anyway. The scribe's stall is empty now. His brushes are gone, his papyrus stacked neatly, a reed laid diagonally across the top like a farewell. By the river, the fisherman waves. "The water's high today," he says. It remembers the offerings. You nod, smiling. It remembers everything. The surface glints like glass, silverware. The sun kisses it, dark where the reeds lean over. You can still see the places where your lantern once drifted, where your written name dissolved into the current. None of it remains, yet all of it lingers like the scent of bread after the oven cools. The fisherman hums an old song about a heron that flew to heaven and forgot the way back. "Poor bird," he says. "Too much sky makes you dizzy." You sit beside him for a while, watching the ripples move outward, each one born from another, none of them ending. The breeze smells of wet clay and sweet grass. Time feels thin, transparent, almost optional. The fisherman glances at you sideways. You look like someone who's learned the trick. What trick? Not fighting the flow. You laugh quietly. "Maybe I just ran out of strength." He grins. Same thing. A long silence settles, comfortable and complete. Across the river, a temple bell rings, a slow, bronze heartbeat, marking the day's beginning. Somewhere, behind you, children shout. A donkey brays. The sound of the world continues. But underneath it all, there's something else. A hum, deep and even. The pulse of everything that's ever been alive in this valley. You think of all you've seen. The builders sweating under Ra's blaze. The priests feeding the sleeping gods. The women singing to ancestors. The scribes giving shape to breath. It all feels circular, deliberate, serene. Egypt's great secret reveals itself not as power, but as patience. Historians still debate how the Egyptians defined eternity. But standing here, you realize eternity isn't a line that stretches forever, it's a circle that never breaks. Every prayer, every name, every sunrise folds back into itself. The fisherman pulls up his net empty. He doesn't mind. "Some days are for catching," he says. "Some are for remembering why you cast." He slings the net over his shoulder and heads home, leaving you alone with the river. You stay there a long time, until the light turns honey gold again. You trace your finger through the sand, drawing lazy spirals that the wind immediately smooths away. You find it beautiful that nothing here wants to last. You whisper one last sentence to the water. "Thank you for teaching me to fade kindly." The current catches the sound and carries it off. The sun lowers. The air thickens with warmth. The sky begins its slow dissolve into amber, then rose, then violet. The world around you turns quiet, not empty, but perfectly balanced, poised between noise and stillness. You walk back through the village. People wave without asking where you've been. They already know. The smell of evening bread drifts from the ovens. The first stars prick the horizon. In your hut, the lamp waits. You light it, not because you need to see, but because light deserves to keep working. The flame steadies, small and gold, throwing soft shadows across the wall. You lie down on your mat, the air warm against your skin, the hum of crickets rising outside. The Nile murmurs somewhere in the dark, a lullaby older than speech. You breathe deeply. The rhythm of your heartbeat joins it, slow and steady, until you can't tell where you end and the river begins. Your last conscious thought is not of gods or monuments or history, but of something much simpler. The sound of water, remembering your name. And as sleep gathers you in its gentle arms, Egypt exhales one final time around you. An endless, tender circle of wind, river, and quiet flame carrying your story downstream, where nothing is ever lost, only repeated softly, forever. The story loosens now. The words stop walking and begin to drift, like petals carried on the same slow current you've been following all this time. The night deepens. The air cools. The last light of the lamp flickers once, just once, and steadies into the soft rhythm of breathing. Outside, the Nile exhales. You can hear it if you listen between the quieter sounds. The slide of reeds brushing one another. The sigh of sand rearranging itself grain by grain. The far-off murmur of oars dipping into black water. Nothing hurries anymore. Even the stars seem to pause, suspended like silver seeds waiting for dawn. You lie still, the mat beneath you warm from your own body. The smell of oil and river mud lingers faintly in the air. When you close your eyes, the darkness feels gentle, like cool linen drawn over your shoulders. Every sound, every breath, folds into a single slow pulse. Somewhere in that darkness, the god's change shifts. Ra rests his burning eyes. Khonsu drifts west, trailing light across the horizon. Thoth dips his pen again, writing the quiet minutes into the book of night. They work softly now, as if mindful not to wake you. You feel the rhythm you've learned from Egypt, the endless, effortless loop of rise and rest, flood and retreat, memory and forgetting. It moves through you, unbreaking. The pulse of your heart is the rivers. The weight of your limbs is the sands. The hush in your chest is the same stillness that keeps the pyramids standing when the world forgets their names. A breeze slips through the doorway, cool against your face. It smells faintly of lotus and smoke. It touches the lamp's flame, and the flame bows, then steadies again. The wind whispers the same line you've heard all along, softer than before. Those who remember are remembered. You breathe out, and the sound blends perfectly with the river's slow voice outside. The last of your thoughts scatter like birds into the night. You imagine the water cradling every name you've spoken, every step you've taken, carrying them downstream, not away, but deeper into that great, calm circle where nothing ends and nothing is lost. The lamp flickers lower. Your breath evens. The Nile keeps whispering, and as the cool gods settle their watch above you, you let the story, the river, and the world all fade together into one long, silver note of peace, until even that sound, too, becomes sleep.